The bustling diner was alive with the clinking of dishes, the hum of conversation, and the sizzle of breakfast orders from the kitchen. Among the organized chaos was Harper, a young waitress with a warm smile and a kind heart. She had a knack for making even the grumpiest regulars crack a smile and prided herself on giving every customer her best. But this morning felt different. As Harper carried a tray of steaming pancakes past the window, something caught her eye. A small golden retriever puppy sitting near the curb. His fur was muddy, his ribs faintly visible beneath his coat, and his big pleading eyes scanned the passers-by, looking for food or even a scrap of attention. Harper paused, her heart aching for the little creature. The puppy wasn't barking or begging. He just sat quietly, staring longingly at the plates of food being carried inside. A soft whine escaped his lips as he sniffed the air. "Poor thing," Harper whispered under her breath, her fingers tightening around the tray. Stray dogs weren't uncommon in the area, but something about this pup struck a chord deep within her. He looked abandoned, yet hopeful. Setting the tray down, Harper turned to her manager, Mr. Connor. "Hey, do you think I could—" "No," he interrupted sharply, barely glancing up from his clipboard. "Don't even think about it, Harper. We're not feeding strays." Harper bit her lip, frustration bubbling inside her. The diner threw away food every day. What harm would one meal do? Moments later, as she passed by the counter, she made a decision. She grabbed a plate of scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast left uneaten by a customer, wrapped it quickly, added a small cup of water, and headed out the door. The puppy flinched as she approached, but didn't run. "Hey, little guy," Harper said softly, crouching down. "Are you hungry? Here, this is for you." The golden retriever tilted his head, hesitant but curious. Slowly, he sniffed the food before devouring it with a hunger that broke Harper's heart. She stroked his head gently, whispering, "You're not alone anymore." Unbeknownst to Harper, her act of kindness had been witnessed, and her life was about to change forever. Harper lingered outside the diner for a moment, watching as the golden retriever wolfed down the food. His tail wagged faintly, the first hint of joy she'd seen in the little creature. She couldn't help but smile. "You were starving, huh?" "Poor thing," she murmured, reaching out to gently scratch behind his ear. "Harper!" The voice snapped her out of the moment like a whip crack. She turned quickly to see Mr. Connor standing in the doorway, arms crossed, his face twisted in disapproval. "What are you doing?" he barked, his tone loud enough to draw attention from inside the diner. Harper stood up, brushing her hands against her apron. "You were just feeding a stray dog." He marched closer, shaking his head. "I told you not to do that. How many times do I have to remind you that this is a business, not a charity?" Harper's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she glanced at the customers peering through the window, whispering among themselves. "Mr. Connor, it was just a plate of leftover food," she argued, trying to keep her voice calm. "We throw so much away every day, and this little guy clearly needed it." Mr. Connor's expression remained cold. "And what happens when he comes back tomorrow? And the next day? We'll have strays all over the place. It's bad for business. If the health inspector sees this, we could get fined." Harper's heart sank. She glanced at the puppy, who now sat quietly, his ears drooping as if he could sense the tension. "But—" "No buts," Connor snapped. "You're fired." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. "Fired," she repeated, stunned. "For feeding a dog?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "For disobeying my orders and embarrassing this establishment." Connor turned on his heel, heading back inside. "And don't let me catch you here again." Harper stood frozen, her mind reeling. Customers stared at her through the glass, some sympathetic, others indifferent. Fired, just like that. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she crouched back down beside the puppy, forcing a smile for his sake. "It's okay, buddy," she whispered. "It's not your fault." The golden retriever leaned against her as if offering comfort. Harper ran her hand through his soft, matted fur. "What do I do now?" she murmured, mostly to herself. She had bills to pay, rent due at the end of the month, and now no job to rely on, all for an act of kindness. Yet despite everything, as the puppy licked her hand softly and wagged his tail, she felt a flicker of hope. as if the little dog was telling her things would somehow be okay. Just then, the soft hum of an approaching car caught her attention. A sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the diner, its engine purring as it came to a stop. Harper frowned, shielding her eyes against the glare of the afternoon sun. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out, a tall figure in a tailored suit, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. He exuded an air of quiet authority as he approached. "Excuse me, miss," the man said, his voice calm yet firm. "Are you the one who fed this dog?" Harper hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Yes, I am," she admitted carefully. "Why?" The man studied her for a moment. His sharp gaze softened as it flicked to the puppy at her feet. Then, much to Harper's surprise, he smiled. "I've been looking for this dog." Harper blinked. "You have?" "Yes. This little one's been missing for days. He belongs to someone very important to me." The puppy looked up at the man, tilting his head as if trying to recognize him. Then, to Harper's astonishment, the man crouched down and held out his hand. "Come here, boy," he said softly. The golden retriever hesitated, glancing between Harper and the man as though torn. Finally, he stepped forward cautiously, sniffing the man's hand before nuzzling it gently. The man's smile widened. "There you are," he murmured, scratching behind the dog's ear. "I've been so worried about you." Harper felt a pang of sadness. "So he's yours?" The man stood up, shaking his head. "Not mine, my daughter's." His expression turned serious. "You have no idea how much this means to us." Harper blinked in surprise. "I'm just glad he's safe." The man reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek leather wallet. "You did something incredible today," he said, handing her a business card. "I'd like to offer you something in return." Harper stared at the card, speechless. The address printed on it belonged to a prominent organization she had only ever heard about on the news. "Come by tomorrow morning," the man continued. "I think I have an opportunity you'll be interested in." Too late. Harper's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the message. Her fingers tightened around her phone, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. She had expected Grady to retaliate, but this was different. This was a threat. Tucker, sensing her unease, whined softly and pressed against her leg. She absently scratched behind his ears, her mind racing. Was this Grady, or someone else who shared his cruel mindset? She quickly showed Andrew the message. He frowned, his jaw tightening. "This is serious," he said. "We should report it to the police." Harper hesitated. A part of her didn't want to back down, but another part of her knew this wasn't just about her anymore. The shelter, the animals, and even the volunteers were all at risk. "You're right," she admitted, "but what if the police can't do anything? It's just a message." "They can at least document it," Andrew replied, "and if anything else happens, we'll have a record." Reluctantly, Harper agreed. They filed a report with the local police, though the officer on duty didn't seem too concerned. "Could be just a scare tactic," he said, tapping his pen against his notepad. "But keep an eye out. If anything escalates, let us know immediately." As they left the station, Harper exhaled slowly, trying to push aside the growing fear in her chest. She wasn't going to let some coward hiding behind a phone screen intimidate her. That evening, as she walked home, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The streetlights cast long shadows, and every sound felt amplified. The rustling of leaves, the distant hum of a car engine, the faint echo of footsteps behind her. She gripped Tucker's leash a little tighter. "Come on, buddy," she murmured, quickening her pace. She reached her apartment building and hurried inside, locking the door behind her. Tucker whined, sensing her tension. She forced a smile, kneeling to ruffle his fur. "It's okay," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "We're safe." But as she glanced at her phone, reading the message again, she wasn't so sure. Harper turned to Andrew, her grip tightening around the threatening note. "We need to take this to the news," she said, her voice unwavering. "If we expose Grady publicly, he'll have nowhere to hide." Andrew nodded, his expression grim. "I'll make some calls. I know a local journalist who's covered animal welfare issues before. If we give her everything we've gathered, she might be able to run a story." Harper took a deep breath. "Let's do it." By the afternoon, they were sitting in the office of Mara Jennings, a reporter for the Summit Gazette. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her mid-30s, Her laptop opened as she typed notes while Harper and Andrew laid everything out. Photos of the neglected animals, the forum posts, witness statements from adopters who had unknowingly bought sick or stolen pets. Mara leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the desk. "This is a solid lead," she admitted, "but I'll need more, something undeniable. If I publish this without hard proof, Grady could sue us for defamation." Harper swallowed hard. "What kind of proof?" "A witness. Someone who's seen firsthand what's going on inside those kennels," Mara said. "If we can get that, I can take this story public." Andrew exchanged a glance with Harper. They both knew what that meant. Someone would have to get inside. That night, Harper paced the shelter's office, anxiety churning in her stomach. Tucker lay at her feet, ears twitching as if sensing her unease. Andrew entered, shutting the door behind him. "I talked to one of the volunteers, Lisa, the vet tech. She used to work at a clinic near Grady's kennels. She said she saw dogs coming in all the time, sick, injured, but the records always seemed off. Missing details, fake vaccination reports." Harper's pulse quickened. Would she talk to Mara? Andrew hesitated. "She's scared. Grady's got connections and she doesn't want to lose her job." Harper sighed, rubbing her temples. "Then we need another way in." A tense silence stretched between them. Then Andrew spoke, voice low but firm. "I'll go." Harper's head snapped up. "What?" "I'll go to the kennels," he said. "Pretend I'm interested in buying a dog. Ask questions, look around. Maybe I can get something solid." "No." Harper shook her head fiercely. "It's too dangerous. What if he recognizes you?" Andrew gave a wry smile. "That's why I won't go as myself." The next evening, Andrew pulled up outside Grady's kennels, dressed in an old baseball cap, sunglasses, and a jacket he'd never worn before. Harper sat in the passenger seat, gripping the edge of her phone. "Are you sure about this?" she asked for the 10th time. Andrew shot her a reassuring smile. "Relax, I'm just a guy looking for a hunting dog." Harper bit her lip. "If anything feels off, get out." "Got it." He squeezed her hand briefly, then stepped out and walked toward the office. Harper watched from a distance, heart pounding. She turned to Tucker, who was sitting alert in the back seat. "I hate this," she murmured. Inside, Andrew was greeted by a gruff-looking man in a stained flannel shirt. Not Grady, but one of his men. "Looking for a dog?" the man asked. Andrew nodded, keeping his voice casual. "Yeah, something strong. Maybe for security." The man grunted. "Follow me." He led Andrew past rows of enclosures. Dogs of all breeds sat inside, some pacing, some cowering. A sickly-looking Labrador caught Andrew's eye, its ribs visible beneath a dull coat. "You got paperwork on these dogs?" Andrew asked, keeping his tone neutral. The man frowned. "Of course, but we don't let folks poke around too much. You buying or not?" Andrew pulled out his phone, pretending to check a message while snapping a quick photo. "Might be. Can I meet the owner?" The man hesitated. "Grady don't deal with customers. You want a dog, you talk to me." Before Andrew could push further, a door at the back of the kennel slammed open. Grady stepped out. Andrew turned slightly, keeping his head low. "Who's this?" Grady demanded. "Guy looking to buy," the flannel-shirted man said. Grady studied Andrew for a moment. Then he nodded. "We'll talk in my office." Andrew's gut twisted, but he forced a grin. "Lead the way." Outside, Harper's nerves were on fire. It had been too long. Something wasn't right. Then from inside the kennel, she heard it. A shout, then a crash. Her blood ran cold. "Andrew!" Without thinking, she shoved open the car door. "Stay, Tucker," she ordered before sprinting toward the fence. A side door burst open. Andrew came flying out, stumbling, blood on his cheek. Behind him, Grady, and he was holding a gun. "Run!" Andrew shouted. Harper didn't hesitate. She turned and sprinted back toward the car. Andrew was right behind her, breath ragged. A gunshot rang out. Harper's heart stopped, but Andrew was still running. They dove into the car. Harper slammed the door shut as Tucker barked furiously. Andrew was gasping for breath, gripping his arm. "You're hit," she whispered, panic rising. "It's just a graze," he gritted out. "Drive." Harper floored the gas pedal, tires screeching as they tore down the road. In the mirror, Grady stood silhouetted in the moonlight, watching them go. And then he smiled. Back at the shelter, Lisa helped clean Andrew's wound. "You could have been killed," Harper snapped, pacing the office. "This was reckless." Andrew exhaled. "We have what we need." He pulled his phone from his jacket pocket, displaying the blurry but incriminating photos he'd taken. Dogs in filthy conditions, unlicensed medical supplies, a notebook with fraudulent sales records. "This is it," Harper whispered. Andrew nodded. "We take this to Mara, we take this to the police, and we end Grady for good." Harper looked at the photos, then at Andrew. For the first time, she felt hope. Grady had threatened them, tried to scare them, even came after them, but he had made one mistake. He underestimated them, and now he was going to lose. "You're coming with us." As they sped toward Grady's hideout, Harper gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white with tension. The truck rumbled down the dirt road, headlights slicing through the thickening dusk. The scent of pine and damp earth filled the air, but beneath it all was the unmistakable weight of urgency. In the back seat, Tucker sat alert, his ears perked, sensing the intensity of the moment. Next to him, Andrew clenched the door handle, his jaw tight. "Are you sure about this place?" he asked, scanning the dense trees that loomed on either side of them. Harper nodded, her resolve unshakable. "That call was real. I heard it in their voice. Grady's here, and so are those dogs. We can't wait for the authorities anymore." As they neared the clearing, a rundown property emerged from the darkness. The skeletal remains of a dilapidated building stood behind a sagging wire fence, its rusty gate slightly ajar. Faint barking echoed through the trees. Harper's heart pounded. "They're here!" Andrew exhaled sharply, unlocking his phone. "I'll call the police again. Give them our exact location." "No time." Harper shook her head. "I'll go in first. If it's clear, I'll signal you." "Harper, I'll be careful," she cut him off. "But those dogs need us." Before Andrew could argue, Harper slipped out of the truck, Tucker right at her heels. The cold night air clung to her skin as she crouched low, slipping through the open gate. The barking grew louder. A heavy silence pressed against her ears, as if the very air around them held its breath. Tucker moved like a shadow beside her, nose twitching as he tracked the scent. "Easy, boy. Stay close," Harper whispered. She crept around the side of the building, and her breath hitched. There, in a makeshift pen covered with torn tarps, were the missing dogs. Two golden retrievers huddled together in the farthest corner, their bodies trembling, their eyes wide with fear and recognition. Relief swelled in Harper's chest. "I see them," she whispered, glancing back toward the truck. Andrew waited, eyes locked on her. She gave a quick signal. Andrew nodded and disappeared back into the truck, likely making the call. Harper turned back to the dogs, keeping her voice soft. "It's okay, babies. I'm here. We're getting you out of this." Tucker wagged his tail faintly, as if trying to reassure them. Harper reached for the latch. A voice cut through the darkness. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Harper froze. Grady Walker stepped out of the shadows, his bulky frame illuminated by the flickering porch light. His face twisted with anger, and in his grip, he clutched a thick metal crowbar. Tucker let out a low, rumbling growl, stepping protectively in front of Harper. Harper straightened, forcing steel into her voice. "Let these dogs go, Grady. It's over. The whole town knows what you've done. You can't run from this." Grady let out a bitter laugh. "You think you can stop me? You've got no right to be here." Harper's pulse roared in her ears, but she didn't back down. "The police are on their way," she warned. "You'll never hurt another animal again." Grady's eyes darkened. He took a step forward, crowbar raised. "I've dealt with people like you before. You don't scare me." Before he could swing, Tucker lunged. A ferocious snarl tore from the dog's throat as he sprang forward, teeth bared. Grady stumbled back, eyes widening in shock. The golden retrievers barked wildly, their fear transforming into a deafening chorus of defiance. Then, sirens. Flashing red and blue lights pierced the night. "Harper!" Andrew's voice rang out as he sprinted toward them. "The police are here!" Grady's gaze flicked to the approaching squad cars. Panic seized his features. Without another word, he tossed the crowbar to the ground and bolted for the woods. Andrew cursed. "Coward!" Harper didn't waste a second. She turned back to the pen, fumbling with the latch. "Come here, sweethearts," she coaxed. The two retrievers hesitated before creeping toward her. Their tails wagged weakly, trust flickering back to life. Harper stroked their matted fur, voice thick with emotion. "You're safe now." Within moments, officers flooded the property, flashlights sweeping the area. A senior officer approached Harper, his expression grim but respectful. "You saved these dogs tonight," he said. "We'll make sure Grady Walker never hurts anyone again." Relief crashed over Harper in waves. Andrew stepped up beside her, pride shining in his eyes. "We did it," Harper exhaled. "Yeah, we did." Later that night, the shelter glowed softly against the darkness. Inside, Harper and Andrew worked to settle the retrievers into their new home. Tucker lay beside them, a silent guardian. Harper crouched down, running a gentle hand through the dog's fur. "No more fear," she whispered. "No more hurt. You're home now." Andrew leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with admiration. "You have a way with them, Harper. It's like they know they're finally safe." Harper glanced at Tucker. "Not just me. Tucker, too. He's been through so much. He understands." Andrew knelt, rubbing Tucker's head. "He's more than just a rescue. He's a hero." Before Harper could respond, headlights cut across the shelter's lot. A sleek black car rolled to a stop. Andrew tensed. "Who the hell is that?" A tall, well-dressed woman stepped out. Hope and hesitation flickered in her eyes as she approached. "Are you Harper?" Harper exchanged a glance with Andrew before nodding. "Yes. Can I help you?" The woman swallowed, then reached into her purse, pulling out a photograph. Her hands trembled as she held it out. "I believe these dogs are mine." Harper's breath caught. The photo showed the two golden retrievers, healthy, happy, playing in a sunlit backyard. "You know them," Harper whispered. The woman nodded, eyes misting. "Their names are Bailey and Riley. Someone stole them weeks ago. I've searched everywhere." Harper's chest tightened as a lump formed in her throat. "They're here," she said, voice thick with emotion. "Safe and sound." The woman let out a choked sob. Inside, Bailey and Riley perked up, their ears flicking. The moment their eyes locked onto her, their tails exploded into furious wagging. The woman knelt, arms wide open. The dogs barreled into her, whining, nuzzling, crying. Harper wiped away a tear as she watched them reunite. The woman looked up at her. "I don't know how to thank you. You didn't just save them. You saved me too." She pulled a business card from her purse. "I run an animal rescue organization. If you're interested, I'd love to help your shelter grow." Harper stared at the card, then at Andrew. He grinned. "It's finally happening." Harper exhaled, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something new. Hope. She looked down at Tucker, running a hand through his fur. "We couldn't have done it without you, boy." Tucker wagged his tail, as if he understood every word. As they locked up for the night, Andrew smirked. "Ready for the next challenge?" Harper smiled, eyes gleaming. "Always."